Hey everybody, Thomas Went back with you, guest hosting the Drum Candy podcast once again today for Drum Factory Direct. And today you're in for a real treat. I have the pleasure of spending some time with a very dear friend of mine, also a great mentor of mine as well, the great Mr. Kenny Washington. Kenny is on several hundred recordings and has played with so many of the great masters of this music. It's going to be a lot of fun to spend some time talking with him about his incredible career. So let's get started. All right, we want to welcome everybody to a brand new episode of the Drum Candy podcast, and today is going to be a real treat because we're going to be spending some time with one of the great modern day masters of not only the drums but of this great American music. Welcoming the fantastic Kenny Washington to the episode. Uncle Wash, thanks for making it, man.
Thanks for inviting me, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey man, it's our pleasure. So there are a lot of different kind of drummers who check out these podcasts, and so just to get everybody on the same page, let's go all the way back for you, man. You're a native New Yorker. You were born in Brooklyn, and you grew up in Staten Island. That's correct, yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, man, and you come from a really musical family. Your brother is an accomplished bassist, and your sister is an accomplished violinist who teaches a lot. How did you come to the drums, man? How did you first pick up a pair of drumsticks?
Well, I mean, you know what it was is my father. My father was not a musician. He didn't play any instruments, but he played the record player. And that was very important for me. So growing up, there was always music on, and I used to like to hang out with him. And see, so on Saturdays, he didn't go to work on Saturdays and Sundays. He'd have the turntable playing records. And then, so I would just hear these fantastic records, man. I mean, and he had a hell of a record collection too. I mean, he didn't have as many things as I have, but he had the creme de la creme. So if it was swing, he had the best of the swing records. Or it'd be bebop, he had the prime choice Charlie Parker records and Dizzy Gillespie records. And see, so I was able to listen to that all this kind of music, man. And I was very fortunate to have a father who said, check this out, man. That was his whole thing. Check it out. And so what happened was I heard Ahmad Jamal's record at the Pershing, and I heard Vernel Fournier, the great drummer. I heard him playing brushes, and that was it for me. I said, man, how do you do that? I wanna know how to do that. And of course, I was bitten by the jazz bug then, and I wanted to play the drums. From as far back as I can remember, I wanted to play the drums. I wanted to do this for a living.
Yeah, yeah, man. So those first days playing, did you just start on your own, or did you start taking snare drum lessons? How did you get into learning it?
I didn't take lessons until many years later. I started out playing by ear, copying off the records. And like I told you, my father had the records, and so I really got into the drummers, and I had a different hero every month. Like I went through all these guys. To this day, you put any one of them on, I can tell you who it is right there. I know what makes them tick, you
Yeah.
know, which is very important. But so at that point, I was just playing by ear, copying and trying to get the sound. This is what I always tell my students, the sound, to get that sound. And I was listening to all these great rhythm sections, O.C. Johnson and Milt Hinton, with Hank Jones and Barry Galbraith, or Philly Joe and the Philly Joe Jones and Paul Chambers and Red Garland, or Lex Humphreys and Sam Jones with Dizzy Gillespie. These were whole high quality rhythm sections, man. I mean, Papa Joe and Milt Hinton, percussion and bass, you know. And so the quality is what got me. And like, so what I would just try to copy and emulate what I heard. And I did that for quite some time, practicing along with records.
Yeah.
It was a stereo. Back in the day, you had an amplifier, and the amplifier had what they called a balance. And you could turn you turn it to the right, and you just get the right channel, and the left channel would cut out. You turn it to the left channel, you get the left channel, and the right channel would be out. So if I was fortunate, if it was a stereo record, like for example, it was a Blue Note record, the drums were always on the right channel. Rudy Van Gelder always had the drums on the right channel. That's how you know that your stereo is phased correctly. If you're sitting in front of it, the drums are always on the right channel. So, or it could be any other company, but sometimes they would pan the drums off to the right, or it could be to the left channel. And that was great for me because I would turn that balance and turn the drum off. And then so in that right channel, if the drums were on the left, I would turn it so I had the right channel, and it'd be Paul Chambers playing. So you couldn't hear the drums on that channel. I mean, they would bleed through sometimes, but basically, depending upon how good the separation was when they did the recording, I could turn that thing off and you wouldn't hear the drums. And I would sit there and turn the thing up, and I would practice and make believe I was playing with Paul Chambers, or make believe I was playing with Sam Jones, man. And so I copied off the records, man. I mean, listening to the records. And the thing is, I did it because I liked it, man. See, in schools now, I teach at two different schools. And at these schools, it's what I call their jam sessions and their cram sessions. See, so you get to school and, you got to do this within a certain amount of time. You have to do this to get a grade. But see, they're going for a grade. For me, I liked it, man. I liked the way the music made me feel. And I would sit up there and pick that needle up and listen to it and say, man, listen. And I would try to copy all this stuff because I liked it. It's the same thing with and not just the drum, because I could sing all the solos, all the other horn solos, everything, man. Because I liked it. But what I didn't realize was that was good, man, for me, because I started realizing the bridge, where the bridge is. I learned tunes, the melodies. A drummer must be able to sing the melodies of these tunes. You must know the arrangements of these tunes. If you don't, it's over. Flush the toilet. The band doesn't have a chance, man.
Yeah, you're right.
Because you're running the band, man, and you got to know all that stuff. So like these vocalists, you got to know the lyrics of the tunes, man. Just because you're the drummer, that doesn't mean you don't have to learn that stuff. You got to know, because then you understand how the tune is supposed to feel, how the message that the composer was trying to get across. And see, so it's just because I liked it, man.
Sure.
And it got to the point that I was copying off the records, and see, so my father decided that I should start taking lessons. So, and I couldn't read, man.
Well, let's pick it up right there. So how did you learn to read, and how did you learn to organize the rudiments and really learn the rudiments? Because that's something that you're a stickler for these days.
Yeah. Well, but see, man, listening to all those drummers, man, every one of them had this together. They had the hands. And again, there's that word, the sound.
Mm-hmm.
I like that sound, man, and I would sit up there listening to Max or Philly Joe or Big Sid Catlett or Cozy Cole. Those guys had chops, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to play like that. I didn't care what it took. If I had to stand on my head and play the snare drum with my feet, if I could get that sound that Big Sid Cat got, or Buddy Rich, the way, the articulation. See, that's what got me, man. Is the how would they put this stuff together, and the articulation and the clarity. I mean, there's those cats. Everything you hear Philly Joe play, or A.T., or any of Shadow Wilson, any of those guys, man, it's like it's there's no slop.
Where does that come from? Where does a drummer develop that kind of clarity?
Well, they develop it from the rudiments, and all
Hmm.
those guys, some more than others, had that basic training. And that's something that doesn't happen nowadays with the drummers that are out here now. Everybody's raving about a lot of these guys. They don't have any hands. They're sloppy. I hate sloppy drummers, man. I hate sloppy drumming. You
Yeah.
know, that's because of that sound. See, that sound got up here in the dome piece, man. And that's gotten me into a lot of trouble over my career because if it didn't sound a certain way, I have a certain, like, quality, man. I wanted to get to the quality of O.C. Johnson and Milt Hinton and Hank Jones. I'm still scratching to get to that kind of quality, man, where it's good, man. The sound, it feels good. They're swinging, they're playing well together. Those are the kinds of things that from listening to those records, man, that's in my dome forever. So
Sure.
so growing up, after a while, my father said, well, he said you should start taking some lessons. So he taught. So in Staten Island, there ain't nothing happening in Staten Island, man. But anyway, there was this place called uh, Peter Parator's. Well, I think his last name was Parator. In those days, in the '60s, man, they had like these mom and pop stores, record stores, and this was a mom and pop music store. And they had instruments in there, and they also had people in there that were teaching the different instruments. And back in those days, in the '60s, man, New York was something else, man. I mean, because these mayors like John V. Lindsay and these kinds of people, they were into this whole thing about keep your kids off the street, and to keep them off the street, have them doing something. And see, so after school, they had these after school programs. So when school ended at 3, your butt didn't hit the outdoors. You take art, you could take music, you could take, gymnastics, whatever you wanted. And all you had to do was get you had to get permission from a legal guardian or your parents. And you're in, man, until about 5:30.
Hmm.
And those programs, man, were something else. They had serious teachers, man. I mean, really serious teachers. But besides that, my father said, well, he took me to one of these mom and pop music stores, and so there was this guy by the name of Dennis Kinney, Dennis. His last name is spelled Kinne, and they took me to him, and he's the one that started me on the advanced techniques for the modern drummer, Jim Chapin's book. I had that book, but see, I couldn't read. So I had that book, which is a complicated book. To me, it's still the Bible of jazz drumming. I had that, and I had the elementary Rubank book, the white and blue covered book. There's also the more advanced one it was like orange, I think, orange and white. Anyway, but I couldn't read, but I could play. For what Rudy Collins, who was my next teacher, and what these guys told, Dennis Kinney told me years later, I guess they said, man, that I could play, but I couldn't read any of this stuff. So all right, the first part of Jim Chapin's book, it's got the triplets, the 1 bar exercises. Well, I opened up that book. I couldn't read any of that stuff. He starts playing it. Da, 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 da. I was able to play every one of those exercises. No problem. Feathering the bass drum and hi-hat on tune for playing the figures. But I couldn't read them. But I could hear it because I copied off of all those records. And
Sure.
all Jim Chapin did was cop all the stuff that Kenny Clark and Max Roach and Big Sid. They should have gotten a piece of the rock, really, truth be told.
Big time, big time.
Yeah, but that's the first book of its kind to show drummers and drum enthusiasts what was actually happening with the, independence wise. So anyway, this guy would play this stuff and I would hear it and I was able to play it right back. So then he says, okay. He says, okay, great. Well, run over these and I'll see you next week for your next lesson. I think I used to go once a week or once every 2 weeks for lessons. I never practiced that stuff because you know what? From memory, I associated each one of those one bar exercises to a different drummer. Like, for example, bean, da, da, dee, da, da. I knew that's Art Blakey.
Yep.
There might be another one, be did that, did that, did that, did that. Arthur Taylor.
Sure.
And I can play them, man. I can play them one after another. And I come back I'd play them. Great, But now, see, when we got to the summary exercise, that would kick my butt because they had all the different things together, man. But then he would play that for me. I was able to hear that.
Yeah.
See,
So when did you actually learn how to read, man?
Well, what happened? What happened was the next teacher I had was the great drummer by the name of Rudy Collins. For those of you all who are not familiar with Rudy Collins, he played with Dizzy Gillespie's quintet in the early to mid 60s. He made some records on the Phillips label. He also played with Herbie Mann. He played with Pete Brown. He played with Randy Weston. He played with Eddie Bonamere. He did a lot of stuff. Well, there was this program in Brooklyn called Muse, Brooklyn Muse. And this place was great, man. There's another free place. And Kenny Barron's older brother ran the jazz department.
Bill Barron.
Great tenor player, man, and a great writer. Man, you talk about somebody that writes some hard music. Ooh, hard music, man. Hard, but very good music,
Yeah.
Chris White was there. And see, so my father knew Rudy. I don't know, somehow or another, my father was at one of those clubs or something, and somehow or another, he and my father became friends, but they lost contact with each other. And I don't know how my father found out about Brooklyn Muse, but he showed me, he says, hey, man, he says, there's this program in Brooklyn for the summer, and Rudy Collins is down there, teaching. It's free. He says, you want to go? I said, yeah. So I'm coming from Staten Island to Brooklyn.
Wow.
That ass part of Brooklyn too. Back then, man, people getting shot every day. It was wild, man. And my mother wouldn't let me go. She said, oh, no, he's not going down there. Oh, no. No, I don't want to be there. No, he's going to get, no. And my father, man, thank God, man, he said, he told my mother, they had arguments about this, man, My father said, listen, now I was a preteen. I was about 10 or 11. I was a preteen. So my father says, let him go. He can't stay out here in Staten Island. There's nothing for him out here. He's got to learn how to travel on his own. Well, he'll get lost on the train. No, he's not going to get lost on the train because I'm going to take him out there. I'm going to show him. He needs to know how to get around in New York City. There's nothing for him in Staten Island. Staten Island doesn't have anything. He's got to travel. He's got to learn how to go out on his own. So they argued back and forth. And then, so finally my father says, I'm sitting over there. My father said, "Come here, man." He says, "Now, out here in the city in Brooklyn, there's a lot of bad stuff going on, man. I'm just going to tell you, it's very bad out here." He says, "Now, uh, if you pay attention and if you, as he said, keep your nose clean," it says, "if you're looking for trouble, you'll find it out there. But if you mind your business and keep your nose clean, you'll be all right. Now, do you still want to go?" I said, "Yeah." And he looked at my mom and said, "Let him go. Let him go." So then he took me up there. He took me down to Brooklyn, showed me how to ride, showed me. That's how I started learning how to get around on the trains and everything, man.
Sure.
That was a big voyage for me, man, because like I said, I was about 10, 11.
That's pretty young,
my
man.
father was allowing me to put on my big boy pants, man. And really, man, I mean, that was the best thing that he could do for me, man. So anyway, I got to the first lesson, and because my father said, tell Rudy who you are. Tell him who you are. And I got to the thing, and the first thing he's signing people up. This is a new program. And I told him who I was. He says, "How's your father, man?" I said, "He's doing all right." "Great, man." "Oh, man," because he told my father years before, he says, "If you ever have a son that wants to play drums, send him to me." I mean,
Wow.
my father didn't know that. So then when he saw me, he says, "Wow, man, yeah." Say, "Oh, man, come on in, man."
Yeah.
So then these were programs. They would have they would have beginners program. They would have the intermediate and advanced. And these are people with varying degrees of ability to play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in the advanced, but just to hang out with Rudy, I would come there early. Just, and go from class to class, beginners, intermediate, and advanced. And then what he would do, man, is the advanced class, and he would show all the guys out. He said, "Okay, man, look, I'll see you all next week." And then he would lock the door, and then he would give me a private lesson, man.
Wow. Wow.
And he would show me different things. And this is how the reading thing, see, because at this point, he used to do a lot of Broadway stuff too.
Yes. Yes.
See, so, in the pits, the Broadway pit things, he used to do a lot of different things, And so, we started going through these books and there was a book, man, that Alan Dawson had. There's a black covered book, and it had these syncopation exercises in it. Berkeley had something to do with putting that book out. Man, I haven't seen that book in years. But anyway, I had that book, and he said, "Well, man, how's your reading?" And so then he put some stuff in front of me, and I couldn't read it. And then he showed me the arrow system, the upbeats and the downbeats, and how to, he said, "When you get in the pinch, man, the and is here, and he would have the arrows, up arrows and down arrows."
Yeah. Yeah.
So then that stuff was coming to me slow, man, but he was on my ass. He said, "Listen, man," he says, "you can play." He said, "Man, but you gotta be out, you have to learn how to read. You can't just get out here and just do anything. You have to learn how to read. You're gonna need this. And if it's the last thing I do, you're gonna learn how to read. You're gonna learn this stuff."
Wow, man.
And so, but I was slow. I was still slow to learn. Then I got into high school, to High School of Music and Art. Incidentally, man, talking about Muse, you know whose house I used to pass going to Muse. I used to, whose house I used to pass every Friday?
Let me guess.
I told you,
Wynton Kelly.
Yeah, Wynton Kelly. And he took me to his house, man. Rudy took me to his house. I got a chance to meet him once. He was a very nice man. This is near the end of his life, man,
Wow.
Funny thing was that program, and so when I was cool the whole summer, I was straight, no problem, traveling on my own, right?
Yep.
So the program ends in August. So then they start the fall program. So of course, I wanted to go to that also. But daylight saving time ends.
Oh man, yeah.
By 5 o'clock, it is dark.
That's right.
And my mother, no, because listen, man, that part of Brooklyn was it Lincoln Place, Lincoln and Bedford.
Mm-hmm.
That's dead man's land.
Mm.
Dead man's land. And after dark, now you go over there, there's a Starbucks there. You see people there walking their little poodles and stuff. I ain't lying, man. Because I went back there, man, about 2 or 3 years ago, man. Just to, brought back a lot of memories. People, they have the Starbucks. Now, that neighborhood has changed because, like 20, 25 years ago, Starbucks, they would have taken Starbucks out, man. That's no kind of way, man. That whole neighborhood has changed. You talk about gentrification, man. The whole neighborhood has changed.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so the fall comes around. Mother says, no, man, because so I'd have to come into school from school at 3 o'clock. And then I'd have to go up there. See, so by 4:15, 4:30, it's dark, man.
It's getting dark, yeah.
By 5 o'clock, it is dark. And see, so then they had the beginners, the intermediate, and then advanced. And see, so my mother said, no, no, not this, no, not in the dark.
Yeah.
So Rudy said, okay, I tell you what. I told him the situation. So then he said, I tell you what, if you get up here, when we finish, because by the time they finished, I think they finished at 6:30, 7 o'clock. Maybe a little bit later than that. So, it's pitch black then.
Yeah.
I'll drive you back. I got to come into the city anyway because he would be going to his gig, So he said, well, I got to go that way anyway. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll drop you off at Atlantic Avenue. So Atlantic Avenue is much more populated than Franklin Avenue. It's in a whole different neighborhood.
Sure.
The Long Island Railroad runs down there, plus all the trains, the 2, the 3, the 4, and the 5.
Yep.
So he would drive me to Atlantic Avenue, Atlantic and Flatbush. He would drop me off, and then he would keep straight over the Manhattan Bridge or the Brooklyn Bridge, and I would take the train there and go on home. So my mother went for it. So nice. I was able to do that too. But anyway, when I got into high school, I was still slow to learn how to read, man. I mean, and I had this teacher by name, fantastic teacher. He's still around, Justin DiCiocio.
Yeah, I studied with him too. Yep.
He's fantastic, man.
He is.
I learned a lot from him, man. And so I was in high school of music and art, which was a great place to be.
Sure.
So, he auditioned me. And so then I had the Jim Chamber book. So I played a few things out of there. So then he says, great. Now that eighth note, does it fall on the downbeat or is it on the end? I couldn't really tell him, and he says, oh, I see. Ear reading. Ear reading. You're going to start from the beginning of this book.
Wow.
So, man, I mean, and so I had to, I had to learn, man. I mean, I had to learn. And then as I was in high school, that high school, man, that period, man, that was a hell of a period, man. I was in school with Steve Jordan, Bela Fleck, the banjo player, Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, yep. Marcus Miller, Ray Chu,
yeah,
who was a percussionist. He did all kinds of stuff.
Omar Hakim, right? Wasn't he with you?
Omar Hakim was there too, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were a lot of people. And Danny Druckmann,
Ah,
of New York Philharmonic, he was there. And I got exposed to all these different, genres and styles of music. Because, man, I just wanted to play bebop, man. That's what I wanted to do.
right.
But being around those guys, man, especially those percussionists, man, that turned my whole way of thinking around. These guys were way advanced, man, much more advanced than me, at least in certain things anyway. I found
Mm-hmm.
out later. I found out later. Mark Sherman was there, the vibraphonist, and he was there too. He says to this day, he says, "Man, we couldn't believe it, man. You could play all the Philly Joe Jones solos by heart." He's exaggerating, yeah, of course, but you know, but being around those guys, it showed me a whole nother side
Yeah.
of the drums. And this is how I got into the whole Wilcoxon thing. Because those guys, Druckmann and all those, they had Rand Steiger, he was another one there. He's a professor out in California, percussion and electronic music, I believe. But all those guys, they had Ted Reed syncopation, they had um, uh, Saron's book, Portraits in Rhythm, the red covered book,
Yep.
and all that stuff, man. And they were practicing classical excerpts, and Danny Druckmann was practicing the beginning of Porgy and Bess, the xylophone,
Yeah.
little, and I got exposed to all that kind of stuff, man. And then they had a percussion ensemble there too, and Ray Chu left school. This cat was so bad. I mean, he played piano. He played piano. He played drums, and he played mallets as well.
Yeah.
Very talented, man. He left school to become musical director of Ashford and Simpson.
Mm. Wow, man.
So when he left school, they needed an extra percussionist. They needed an extra drummer. So then Justin says, "Well, look, man." So he formed this, on his own time, man. He wasn't getting paid extra for this. He formed this percussion ensemble, and they would play, Edgar Varese ionization, and these 20th century hard ass stuff, man.
Yeah.
And so, but I wasn't a part of that, But then when Ray Chu left, they needed an extra player.
Yeah.
So Justin said, "Man, come on up after school, man. I want you to play some. We have some parts. I need you to play them. Ray's not here." So I said, "Okay." So I get upstairs. After school is Danny Druckmann and all the badasses. They're warming up. And so they put some piece. I don't know. It was some piece they put in front of me. And I opened it up because I saw it was like a bar, one bar of 4/4 time, a bar of 5/4 time, and a bar of 3/16 time. I had never seen anything like that. My eyes said, "No, no, 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 no." Put the sticks back in the bag. I was out of there. Man, by the time my butt hit the door, now Justin, they were warming up, and Justin was writing something on the board or something. And just as my butt was leaving right out of the door, man, I had almost made it, man. Came to the door and grabbed me. He said, "Man, where you going?" I said, "Listen, man, I can't play this. I can't play this, man. I can't play this. Way beyond me. I can't play it. Forget it, man. Get somebody else to do this." He said, "Sure, you can play it. If you couldn't play it, you wouldn't be here. I wouldn't ask you to come here in the first place." He said, "Man, don't worry about it. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. I'll show you how to play this." I said, "Listen, man, it'll take me 1 year to learn one bar. I have all these other guys waiting for me to learn one bar. Forget it. Forget it, man. It's over." No. He says, "You can play this stuff, man. If you couldn't play it, you wouldn't be here. And you're going to learn how to play this. So get back in there. You're going to learn." He said, "Man, don't worry about it." And he said something that I'll never forget. He says, "The quarter note always remains constant." So in other words, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so in 6/8 time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. That half, that dotted quarter note is like the quarter note in 4/4 time.
Right.
So it's constant. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So and I'll never forget that, man. That was brilliant of him to say that to me. So I came back in there, and I had to learn that stuff, and then by this time I had, now being in school, I got sort of kind of close to Danny Druckmann, and because I used to see them around, but I didn't really know them.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm in this percussion ensemble, and then I end up being in the what they call the senior wind ensemble. So I'm always around him, and around these guys, these percussion guys, man, that, they know a whole bunch of stuff. And I started checking them out. These guys were talking about, they would have these serious discussions on how many buzzes per stick for a good roll. I never heard nothing about that. And so watching them, and, just things would happen, just watching what Danny Druckmann would do, how you play on a snare drum or approach like a bass drum. I'm talking about a concert bass drum.
Sure.
How to play the drums, certain spots to play the drums for certain sounds, for certain ensembles, for certain sounds in this part of the piece, and what kind of triangle beater to use.
Sure.
These guys are serious. They count 100 bars, man, and 101st bar to play one quarter note on that triangle. It's got to be right there.
Yep.
And this is the kind of stuff that I was really getting exposed to. See, so I was learning a lot, and so when I got in, I sort of kind of got into that stuff. I should have got into it a little bit more, maybe, but but I got enough of it to the point, man, like where, I was one day I was playing or practicing on a snare drum, and these guys, they were playing on different parts of the snare drum for different sounds. It was pianissimo or whatever, and I was practicing, and I started hitting the different parts of the drum, and then I realized, said, man, that's how Big Sid Catlett and Papa Joe Jones and Cozy Cole were able to get all those different sounds out of one drum. I mean, the snare drum can be your mounted tom-tom, it can be your floor tom-tom also.
Right.
So and then it hit me, man. You talking about an epiphany? Is that the word, man? It's all connected, man.
Yeah.
In one way or another, all this stuff is connected. And I said, you know what, man? If you learn this stuff, you'll be able to play better bebop. You'll be a better jazz drummer. If you learn this stuff, if you learn this, you'll be a better, this will hopefully make you a better jazz drummer.
Absolutely.
Man, how, and I realized this with Philly Jones, Elvin Jones too. All did the same thing. And that was a big thing for me. And then that same teacher that I had in Staten Island when I was like a preteen, I went back to him. I went back to him because, now being around Danny Druckmann and Mark Sherman and all these guys, I thought I wanted to be a percussionist. Yeah, right. A tall tale, man. I mean, had to get all the things. So anyway, I went back to him because Dennis Kinney could read anything, man. I don't care what it is. You could splatter some stuff on the wall, man, and he'd read that. This guy could read anything, man. So I went back to him and I said, listen, man, I want to learn how to read better. I said, man, all that's the jazz stuff. Yeah, man, I know about all that. Or at least I thought I knew about it, I had a long way to go back then, see. But I was like 17, 18. I said, man, I don't want to learn that. I can get that on my own. I want to learn how to read better. I want to go through that book, Portraits of Rhythm, that Cerrone book. I want to learn through that. I want to do, this is what I want to do. And he says, okay, but I wouldn't recommend Portraits in Rhythm right off. There's another book that you should work on. We can work on it, and then we'll go to Portraits in Rhythm. It was this book. There was this book by Garwood Whaley.
Yeah.
And I saw the book because, man, I gotta get a copy of that book because my book was long gone, man. I mean, I destroyed it.
Yeah, I went through one of his books too.
And it had all these designs on it. And
yeah, that's it.
It was a book of snare drum things.
Etudes, yeah.
Etudes with different time changes.
Exactly.
But it wasn't quite as tough as Cerrone's book.
Yeah.
He says, let's go through this book. I think you should go through this book first, and then we can go into Cerrone's book. What do you think about that? I said, well, okay, man. And that's exactly what happened, man. I mean, see, so it took me a long time to really get that stuff together. Of course, the idea of being a classical percussionist, that went way out the window, man. I mean, because I don't know how those guys do it. It's hard enough to keep the snare drum together, and then also to learn to play marimbas and xylophone and all that other stuff, man. I mean,
sure.
More than a notion, man.
So let's talk for a second about Wilcoxon and rudimental drumming, because
that's what I had to say. That's what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that because I got sort of kind of off the beaten track, man.
That's all right.
What happened was I found out about Wilcoxon through Justin DiCioccio. I saw Druckmann and those guys. They had that book. I had never seen that book before. But I had Justin DiCioccio. I had him for homeroom. When you get the cool stuff.
Yeah.
So I had him in homeroom. He just happened to be a homeroom teacher. And I had him. One day he comes into the class. I'm already there. He walks in and he says, "Hey man, you know about this book?" And he shows me, modern rudimental swing solos. I said, "No." He says, "Well, you do now." Plopped it on the table. He says, This is where Philly Joe Jones and all the guys got a lot of stuff from." He said, check it out.
Mm-hmm.
That was the beginning of it. Now, I couldn't, man, I mean, like rolling in rhythm. Man, I used to hear those guys, man, they rattle that bad boy off just like it was just boom, Man, I couldn't play that like that, man. I couldn't play that stuff like that.
Yeah.
I had to do it slow. I had to figure it out my own way. And this is how I started with what I call my bar by bar method.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the only way I could get it, man, was to break it down. One bar at a time. You play one bar at a time. You play give yourself a bar rest, and you play the same bar again until you get it. And you want it to be even, accents up here, unaccented notes down here for articulation.
Yep.
You can hear the difference between the two without smashing the drum. Now, and that was the beginning. I mean, then I would break it down bar by bar, sometimes going from one beat to the next.
Sure. So for drummers who aren't really familiar with that stuff, you and I have talked about this a lot over the years, but I want to hear you talk about this. I think a lot of younger drummers, when it comes to rudimental practice stuff like Wilcoxon, a lot of them think that all that stuff does for you is increase your speed, but it does so much more. Could you talk about what else you get out of working on stuff like that, other than just faster hands?
Yeah. Yes, in a way, it will increase your speed, But the other thing that you all maybe are not realizing is it improves your two-hand independence or your two-hand dexterity, the coordination between your two hands. For example, you're playing a single paradiddle, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right. Well, your right is doing something and your left is not. Left, right, left. Well, your left is doing something and your right is not. So to play that rudiment evenly, those are the first steps to two-hand independence. Way before spang-a-lang and playing the figures with your left hand.
Mm-hmm.
These are the first steps, the basics, man. Doing Wilcoxon and really working it out helps your sound, the sound you get on the instrument. First of all, you become even-handed. If you work on the stuff enough, you become even-handed. Guys come to me for lessons, or I see guys out here playing, they'll play the ride cymbal one way, and then the left hand is like playing pianissimo. It's uneven, man. The sound is uneven. That's not the way Philly Joe Jones and Art Blakey and those guys played. And there's some knucklehead out here on the internet saying, well, the snare drum doesn't play as loud as the right hand. That's wrong, man. That's wrong. It's an even sound. Now, with the left hand, there are different dynamic levels. There's different dynamics and things that they play depending upon the rhythm, the articulation. That's something else again.
Sure.
So it does vary, but all in all, when you listen to Philly Joe Jones, man, or any of those guys, or Art Blakey, A.T., any of the badasses, when you listen to them on records, you can hear that they have an even sound between their left hand and their right hand. I saw these guys live, and it's the same thing, man. I mean, it's not like somebody boosting them up on the record. It's the same way live. So anyway, this stuff helps your two-hand independence. It helps your sound. It helps your sound, the projection. Because, man, listen, man, they got people out here that are playing. Listen, man, I live in Brooklyn. They got guys out of here that are playing. They're in Manhattan that smoke, and I can hear them here in Brooklyn, man.
I hear you.
Really loud. All these drummers, play loud, man. And the thing that you drummers have to remember is the louder you play, the less the sound projects. You go into these clubs, man, like Smoke or Smalls or Mesros. These drummers banging the drums like gorillas. And then the people, the audience, the paying customers, they're the ones that are sitting right by the drums, and they're doing just like this. They're sitting up there, and their eyes they're doing just like this. Because you play loud. Or if they're sitting up there near the table, they're sitting up there with their elbows on the table like this.
Right.
That's not supposed to be like that, man. But then the funny thing is, when you get to the back of the place like Mesros or even the Vanguard, or that little way going towards, where the telephone used to be, going into the men's bathroom where the ice machine is.
Yeah, right by the kitchen.
Yeah, right by the kitchen. You can't hear the drums at all. But meanwhile, when you get up on the drums, the drummer, whoever he or she is, they're getting a harsh, ugly sound out of the instrument, man. I mean, it's just, they're sweating and everything and all this kind of stuff. And the sound is not projecting.
Yeah.
That's one thing I realized when I first saw Elvin Jones. Now, I didn't see Elvin Jones with John Coltrane. That's a little bit before my time. I was a kid at that point. But one of the things that impressed me the most when I was able to go to see Elvin on my own was, man, this cat didn't play that loud at all. That's what got me.
Yeah.
He had a nice full sound, man. I mean, you
Yeah.
could sit right by the drums. Now, he always played dynamically, man.
Of course.
But even when he got loud, it was a pleasant loud. It was a fullness, and he was playing them drums from the bottom to the top. And
Mm.
see, so it wasn't like fluttering out. But it was a full sound, man. And then when you got to the back, another spot to go to is right at the back of the bar, right by that wall. You know where that design is, that
Yeah, the
mural?
mural. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that tells all. You get back there or where the kitchen is,
yeah.
still a nice full sound. Nice even hand between left and right hand. And all this comes from practicing these rudiments, practicing Wilcoxon. I'm
Yeah.
guaranteeing you, man. I'm telling you, this is where it comes from. You know?
So along those lines, I wanted to ask you about, drummers. We can make or break, a gig as far as how we're playing the room, so to speak.
Yep.
When you get to a new venue, a venue that you're not familiar with, maybe on the road somewhere, what are some of the things that you're listening for at the sound check or during the first couple tunes? How are you assessing the room so that you can blend properly?
Well, that's a great question. And man, I used to play loud, man,
I
until
know.
Mel Lewis, until Mel Lewis got on my ass.
Right.
Mel Lewis jumped all over me, man. I mean, he just went completely nuts on me, man. I mean, really. I mean, and then he invited me. Then he invited me to his house. Man, he says, "Young man," he gives me his card. "We have a lot of work to do." And I came up to his house, man. And when I walk in the door, the first thing out of his mouth was, he says, "Young man, you want to be a success in this business?" I said, "Well, yeah." He says, "You have to learn adaptability.
Mm.
You have to learn adaptability."
Hmm.
And for the next, man, I got to his house about 7:30 in the evening. I didn't get out of it until maybe about 3:15, 3:30 in the morning.
Mm.
Because man, I mean, he could talk, man, but he knew a lot of stuff, man. And I was speechless. He was just sitting up there playing records that he had made.
Mm.
Color Me Barbara, Barbara Streisand,
Hmm.
Alley Oop,
Oh
the
yeah.
first rock and roll records.
Yeah.
He's on all those records. Jesse Belvin, Mr. Easy.
Mr. Easy, yeah.
Um, then he started talking about the differences between playing with Ray Anthony's band and playing with Stan Kenton's band.
Yeah.
And he got in, and then he was playing, the West Coast things, Marty Page, and I mean, and man, I was knocked out. By the time I left his head, I felt like by the time I left his house, my head felt like it was going to burst. I mean, and the first thing and of course, one of the first things he told me, he says, "You play too goddamn loud, man." He says, "If you can't hear everybody on the bandstand, you're playing too loud. It's your fault."
Mm.
He says, "If you can hear," he says, "you don't need monitors and all that other BS." He said, "They're two funny looking things on the side of your head, man. Those are your monitors."
Mm.
He says, "If you can't hear the piano, which is on the other side of the stage or the stage wherever you're at, you're playing too loud. If you can hear the piano clearly, if you can hear the bass and you can hear the saxophone or the trumpet, the front line clearly, you're playing the right dynamic level. And if you can hear them, that means the audience can hear." So when anytime I come into a club or a hall, of course these knucklehead engineers, they want to set up all their mics, which I can't stand. But we need this for this, and I said, "Listen, man, and then they're gonna do what they want to do anyway."
Oh yeah, always.
I said, "Look, man, you know what? I run it here. You ain't nothing but a peon of a sound man." I said, "Listen, man, I run it here. It's my sound. You think I've been waking up 7 o'clock in the morning every morning practicing so I get a sound, man? That I mean, I get
Right.
into an argument, with them,
Yeah.
But the thing is, in like a hall or whatever it is, first thing I do is like I walk in and I can almost tell how I'm going to have to play.
Mm. What tells you that?
Well, I mean, the room, the ceiling, the height of the ceiling.
Sure.
Sometimes, you play in these big places. I remember playing in a theater. I can't think of the name of this museum. Was it? Yeah, it was a museum.
Mm-hmm.
Playing it with Charlotte, man, and of course, all you had to do is hit the drum. Wham! The sound is all over the place.
Yep.
So I go in there and I'm saying, oh, okay, I see what I'm gonna have to do. It's a challenge to me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so for me, what I do is I'll, at the sound check or whatever it is, from the first note, man, if I can, like I said, if I can hear the piano, I don't need any monitors. If I can hear the piano, I can hear the bass. The bass could play acoustic, man. It
Right.
wouldn't matter to me, you know. So that, we don't need these mics. I hate sound checks, man. It's a waste of time. I could be home watching Law and Order, practicing, or listening to records, or taking a bath, or doing something I want to do, man. That sound check is not for me. It's for those guys. It's for the engineer. He should know the room. He's been in there for 10, 15 damn years. I don't need the sound check, man. I know what I got to do, man. Why waste my time? I hate sound checks. It's a waste of time, man. But
I got it.
Sound check, man. That's what rock and roll is, man. I don't play rock and roll. Damn, man. But it ain't. I know everybody's gonna think, like, man, this guy's crazy, man.
I think they've been thinking that for the last 45 minutes, but that's all right. That's all right. Keep going. Keep going.
but so it's a challenge to me. This is why I get in these different rooms, whether it be smoke or all these different places, and see the audience. They just think drums are loud.
Right.
And then sometimes there's been people that they're not real jazzers, and they might be pissed because they're sitting right by the drums because they're, man, we're not hear anything else, man. Oh man, it's cracky, lips all poked out and everything, But then when I start playing, then some of them say, I never knew the drums could be played like this. They're right. Everybody's playing loud all the time. And so the other thing is, when I'm playing at one of these places, especially like it could be like in a museum or a wide open space, when I'm sitting up there playing, I can feel myself in the audience. It's like I can actually see myself in the audience sitting up there just like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening from out there.
Yeah. Yep.
Is it all right? You playing too loud? I'm sitting up there. I'm gauging myself and how I'm playing with this band.
Yeah.
Sitting up there, it's almost like, and I'm telling you, y'all might think this is crazy, but I can actually see myself with my arms folded just like this, sitting like, say, near to the back of in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Carnegie Hall, it could be anywhere. And I'm sitting there like this. I'm playing the drums, but I can see myself. And I can hear back there what it is like.
Yeah.
And if it passes the test, well, then okay, I'm straight.
Yeah. Cool.
Instead of, because I hate loud drumming, I never did like loud drumming, But,
no, I hear you, man. I hear you. Let's just switch gears one more time. So, for a lot of younger drummers who get into this music, the topic of transcription and transcribing is something that is talked about a lot. But I think, as I know you do, a lot of them go about it in the wrong way. Could you talk about, if a young drummer hears something that Max or Philly Joe plays, how do you go about figuring it out and learning it the correct way?
Well, first thing is this. If you go through the Wilcoxon book, a lot of that stuff that Philly Joe Jones and Max Roach and Elvin Jones and Jimmy Cobb, all those cats play, it comes from that book. It comes from that book because Wilcoxon was very much into the early drummers, the guys like Baby Dodds,
Yeah.
Big Sid Catlett,
Chick
Cozy
Webb.
Cole, Chick Webb. Cozy
Yep.
Cole is the one that introduced Philly Joe Jones to modern rudimental swing solos because he had a drum studio along with Gene Krupa in the early 50s.
Yeah.
So so what happens is from that book, you can, of course, the way Max and Philly Joe played this stuff, they taken it a step further. They know that stuff, and Max taught Philly Joe
Mm.
that
Yeah.
book. People don't
Yeah.
realize that, but Philly Joe used to come to Max's house here in Brooklyn for help.
Mm.
Max could play all that stuff.
Yeah.
But see, they both took that to another level, man. They took what they could from Wilcoxon and they built on top of that. So, but anyway, getting back to transcription, learning that book and learning it the right way, you can hear certain things that they play that come from that book. And so it's an experiment. You say, well, man, or sometimes you're listening, and that's what got me into the book. When I started practicing, I said, wow, man, that's how Philly Joe played that rhythm. I couldn't figure it out. That's the sticking he used.
Mm.
So from listening, you start sort of kind of like putting two and two together. Well, that sounds like this. The other thing is experimentation. Listening, man. Listening and copying or trying to copy what you hear.
So it's fair to say that the first thing you should not do is get a piece of paper and a pen.
Absolutely not. That's the worst way, the wrong way to learn any kind of transcription. I see that up in school all the time, man.
Right.
So come up in Juilliard, when they have the juries, they have to know that solo by heart
Right.
by the time of the jury.
Okay.
I've been up there sometime. There was a guy that's playing a Charlie Parker solo, and he sounded just like he was playing an etude in the book. And you know what? I walked up to the music stand while he was playing, and just somehow or another, my foot got stuck in the music stand. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
The music stand falls, and that Charlie Parker solo fell too. He didn't play it with any of the articulation. We won't even talk about feeling or emotion or the natural stuff, the attitude. That's the whole thing, the attitude. And so learn it by heart, man. Learn to sing it.
Yeah.
Drum solo, learn how to sing it. Or play it a few times, but do it because you like it, man. Not because you have to do it for an assignment, because
Yeah.
you learn it, man. Learn it by heart so you can play it by heart. Be able to sing the solo. And then start experimenting. Playing what you hear. Trying to figure it out. See, that's what I did like with all those guys, man, especially Philly Joe and those guys. You could hear them playing something, and I would sit there and try to copy it, and I would say, no, that's not the right sound. That sound, that word, man, is very important to me. It doesn't sound like that. So, well, let me try this sticking. Nah. You try something. Yeah, I think that's what it is. It sounds like what he played, and you try to figure it out, sticking wise, and then you go to the next part, and you should be able to sing. Like I said, you should be able to sing this solo. You should be able to play air drums, man. When you hear that solo, man, if you're out by a set of drums and you're on the train or on a bus or something, you should be able to hear it up here in your dome in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Play air drums and be able to hear what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and then you start experimenting, and again, that word sound. Wow, man, you listen to how Max Roach would stuff that bass drum sometime. Instead of pulling the beater out, he would the beater would stay in for a certain sound. Back,
Hmm.
better that, but that boom, but the boom, boom, that boom, Then the next time he instead of um, stuffing the bass drum or muting it, he would so that the drum would resonate. Different
Yeah,
kind of sound, man.
sure.
All those guys do that same thing. And so you listen to it and you experiment until and you try to get the sticking to the best of your ability. And then after that, now if you're in school, it might be a school where you have to transcribe it. Well then, I mean, transcribing bar by bar, the worst thing you can do is even, yeah, they have on the computers and everything, man. They have the thing where you can slow it down. That's cool. But the worst thing you can do is to just do it, transcribe it bar by bar. Because you're not learning it. You don't know it up here. That means that every time you play it, you got to look at the music.
Right,
Don't
right.
know it, man. That means you don't know it. You haven't even halfway gotten to it. It might look pretty on paper, but chances are, I can almost bet every CD and record I have here that you're not playing it the way it's supposed to be played. You're not getting the sound and the attitude. But after a while, after listening to it over and over again and feeling what it is and experimenting with it, you put it together.
Yeah.
Now, when it's time, now if you're in the school where you have to write it down, what should happen is this. By that time, you should be able to hear that solo in your dome. And for those of you who know when I say dome, your head, your brain is in your dome. This is your dome piece up here. Everything comes from the dome. So, so the thing is, it's true, man. I mean, if it's not up here in the dome, it ain't gonna come out here, man.
You got that right.
I mean, anything you do for that matter.
Right.
So if you have to write it down, you should be able to look up at the sky and hear it up here
Right.
and write it down. I tell you what else should happen. Just like the digital it was the NBC, was it the NBC building where they had the digital thing that has the news,
Yeah. Yep.
stocks, that should go straight across your dome, straight across your forepiece, your forehead. You should be able to look up here and those notes, just like that digital board, man, that you see in 42nd Street.
Yeah.
Those notes, should go straight right across the front of your dome, right up here. You should be able to see it and hear it,
Mm-hmm.
and write it down. Now you might have to go to the record,
Yep.
and of course you write it in pencil. I
Yep.
mean, to make sure you're doing it right,
Sure.
which is cool. But the way so that it looks right. But for the most part, you should be able to play that solo. You should be able to play it before you have even written it down. And another thing about transcription, if you don't write down the sticking, it is not a drum transcription. Any knucklehead could write the notes down. But the beauty of somebody like a Philly Joe Jones or Max Roach or any of those guys is how they mix and match rudiments,
Of course.
stickings, how they put that stuff together. That's what makes Philly Joe Jones a genius.
The thing that always
Stuff together, man.
Yeah.
Wow, man, the combinations, how it works.
But the other thing about those guys that always blew me away is that all those, I mean, let's just take the 50s, just all those guys that played in the 50s, they were all speaking the same jazz dialect, but they each had such an incredibly unique sound, man. And it's from those stickings mostly, yeah?
Sure. And I mean, and of course it's Max Roach, man. I mean, Max Roach, he created, at least for modern jazz, the language, the sticking. He created how to adapt what Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, and Bud Powell were doing to the drum set. So, but he's well familiar with the swing era drummers.
He came out of it, yeah.
That's right, man. I could play you records of Max Roach, Roy Haynes too.
Absolutely, Louis Russell.
Louis Russell, where you would say whoever it is swinging his ass off. He's a great swing drummer. They sound like very, very good swing drummers. Max,
Kluk.
Kluk is another one. He played in Count Basie. He subbed for Papa Joe.
That's right.
He made records with Buddy Johnson. He made records with Sidney Bechet.
That's right. Edgar Hayes' band, of course.
Edgar Hayes' band. He was on the original In the Mood.
That's right.
They predate Glenn Miller.
That's right.
In the Mood.
Yep.
Yeah, man. I mean, what was I saying, man? I lost the train of thought.
We were talking about Max and how he developed like the modern language.
He developed it. Yeah, he developed that modern language, and from that, and from there, all those guys in the '50s, Haynes, of course, Philly Joe, Cobb,
Louis Hayes.
The formula. They took that formula. I call it formulas. Max had a formula. Well, Philly Joe Jones, he takes that formula to a different spot. He's got his own formula based on what Max, and we won't even talk about Baby Dides,
right?
And Catlett and Cozy Cole. It's like a relay race.
Yeah,
and this keeps going and going and going.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to do a part 2 because, man, we literally are on like the second thing I wanted to ask you about, and it's already been an hour and 20 minutes. No, it's all good, man. This is exactly what I wanted to happen because you always make sure to get your point across, and that's very important, man. No, I appreciate it, man. So I tell you what, we'll make this part 1, and then we'll do part 2 in a few months.
Well, you want to do part 2 now?
Well,
you got a split or what?
Yeah, I actually have a gig. I got an early gig, so I tell you what, man. We'll
give me some money, man. Don't hide, divide.
Hey, man, look at all those records. Looks like you got some money in your pocket, man. Look at all that, man.
I don't know. I wish.
Yeah, I wish too.
For every one of these CDs and LPs, I'd be doing all right.
I tell you what, man, before we sign off, man, what do you have anything coming up that you want to let people know about? Any gigs, any recordings?
Oh man, there's a band that Mike LaDon's put together, man. We made a record about a month or two.
Oh, the Heavy Hitters, yeah.
Oh, the Heavy Hitters, right. We're going to be at Smoke coming up. I think that's next week. I think it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful.
So the band, well, some of the guys that made the record won't be on the gig, but it's still going to be a good gig. Vincent Herring, I think. Oh no, maybe it's Jim Snydero on the gig.
Oh yeah.
Eric, LaDon. I don't think Pete is going to be there. There's this young bass player that's playing. Myself and Pelt, Jeremy Pelt. Beautiful, man. And LaDon wrote some great music, man. I mean, wonderful. I'm looking forward to this, and I certainly hope that the band gets some more gigs. I'll be playing with Charlotte again at the Vanguard for a couple of weeks in September. So beautiful. Look out for that too, I guess. And I have a radio show too, man. I have a new radio show coming up. Yeah, please tell them about that. Which one? The one that's on now, or the new one? Both of them, man. Okay. Well, the first show I've been doing since Valentine's Day is the show on KSDS, which is in San Diego. You can check it out online. And the show is called Jazz Across America. And every weeknight, there's a different host that has curated the show from the jazz spots, shall we say, or the jazz cities in America. Of course, not all of them. Chicago, New Orleans, Kansas City. There's one or two others, and so I'm doing New York.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm basically playing live recordings from the jazz clubs in New York, Vanguard or Sweet Basils or Boomers, and also the halls, from
Sure.
the 30s and 40s, and I'm also playing a lot of rarities as well, besides the live things. And then the other show will start coming up. Man, so you good with calendar stuff, man?
Sometimes.
So, okay, today is the 10th.
Yep.
The show starts a week from Sunday.
Okay. It'll be on Sundays on KSDS.
Sunday, yeah, KSD, yeah, and so it's 8 to 10 Pacific.
And then your other show is on Monday evenings, correct?
Yeah, the other show is on Monday evenings. That's from 8 to 10 Eastern time. So that would be what,
7, something like
five to
that.
7 Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
But now the other show is called Sepia Voices, and I'm paying homage to the great vocalists, great African American vocalists in jazz and blues. So that's going to start Sunday, not this coming Sunday, but the following Sunday. I don't have the date, but
That's okay if they
look
search.
on look on KSDS and they'll be able to tell you, because I don't know
Beautiful.
what this is going to go on anyway. But it's paying homage to the great African American vocalists. So you'll hear Bessie Smith, Sammy Davis Jr., James Brown singing some jazz, Marvin Gaye singing some jazz, Sarah Vaughan, and you hear Jesse Belvin and people like that no one talks about, like Ethel Waters, one of the great entertainers of all time, or an obscure figure like Retta Hughes, so there'll be a lot of surprises, a lot of rarities, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy that show. So that's
Beautiful, man.
another thing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and for imparting all the great insight and wisdom, man. It's greatly appreciated. I mean that.
Well, thank you, man. I'm sorry that I took them.
Oh, man, that's okay. I kind of knew that was going to happen. I've been knowing you long enough, man. I knew that was going to happen. So I tell you what, we'll do part 2 in a couple months, man.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Wash.